The power of emotional honesty, opening speech. We live in a world that rewards performance, not truth. We learn early how to smile when we're hurting, how to say, I'm fine when we're not, and how to hide the parts of ourselves that feel too messy, too sensitive, or too real. But here's what we rarely admit: hiding our emotions doesn't protect us. It isolates us. Emotional honesty is not about oversharing or losing control. It's about telling the truth of what's happening inside us with courage, clarity, and care. It's about choosing authenticity over approval and connection over comfort. When we allow ourselves to be emotionally honest, we reclaim our voice, our relationships, and our sense of self. Today, we're going to explore why emotional honesty is not a weakness, but one of the most powerful acts of courage we can practice. 6 key points of the speech. 1, emotional honesty builds real connection. Connection doesn't come from perfection, it comes from truth. When we share how we actually feel without masks or performances, we invite others to do the same. Emotional honesty creates relationships rooted in trust rather than appearances. 2, suppressed emotions always find a voice. What we don't acknowledge doesn't disappear. It shows up as stress, resentment, anxiety, or numbness. Emotional honesty allows us to face our feelings before they control our behavior and damage our relationships. 3, vulnerability is the gateway to emotional truth. Being emotionally honest requires vulnerability, the courage to be seen without guarantees. It means admitting fear, sadness, or uncertainty without knowing how others will respond. But vulnerability is where healing and growth begin. 4, emotional honesty strengthens boundaries. Honesty doesn't mean saying yes to everything or sharing everything. It means knowing what you feel and communicating it clearly. Emotional honesty helps us set boundaries that protect our energy and honor our values. 5, truth. Telling breaks the cycle of shame. Shame thrives in secrecy and silence. When we name our feelings instead of hiding them, shame loses its power. Emotional honesty transforms self-judgment into self-understanding. 6, living honestly creates emotional resilience. When we allow ourselves to feel deeply and speak truthfully, we build resilience. Emotional honesty helps us process pain, recover faster, and remain open-hearted even after disappointment or loss. Closing, emotional honesty doesn't mean being fearless. It means being brave enough to tell the truth, first to yourself, then to the world. When we choose honesty over hiding, we choose connection over isolation. And that choice has the power to change our relationships, our leadership, and our lives. Emotional honesty builds real connection. At the heart of every meaningful relationship is connection, and at the heart of connection is truth. Yet many of us are taught subtly and consistently that honesty about our emotions is risky. We learn to present curated versions of ourselves, to stay pleasant, agreeable, and composed, even when our inner world tells a different story. Over time, this emotional performance may keep the peace, but it slowly erodes genuine connection. Real connection does not come from being impressive or problem-free. It comes from being real. Emotional honesty allows others to meet us where we actually are, not where we pretend to be. When we share our feelings with clarity and care, we invite others into our inner world. That invitation builds trust, the kind of trust that says, you can show up as you are here. Without emotional honesty, relationships become transactional. Conversations stay on the surface. We talk about events, not experiences. We share opinions, not emotions. While this may feel safer, it also keeps us lonely, even in the presence of others. Emotional honesty transforms interaction into connection by replacing performance with presence. Being emotionally honest does not mean sharing every thought or feeling with everyone. Discernment matters. But when we consistently hide our true emotions from the people closest to us, we deny them the chance to truly know us. Connection requires risk, and the risk is being seen. When one person leads with emotional honesty, it often creates a ripple effect. Others feel permission to lower their guard. They realize they don't have to pretend either. This shared vulnerability deepens relationships, whether in families, friendships, teams, or communities. Trust grows not because everything is easy, but because honesty makes challenges navigable together. Emotional honesty also strengthens connection with ourselves. When we acknowledge our feelings instead of dismissing them, we become more self-aware and grounded. This inner connection allows us to show up more authentically with others. We communicate more clearly, listen more deeply, and respond more thoughtfully. Of course, emotional honesty can feel uncomfortable. There is always the fear of misunderstanding, rejection, or judgment. But avoiding honesty carries its own cost. The cost is disconnection, resentment, and emotional distance. Over time, that distance becomes far more painful than the vulnerability we tried to avoid. Connection thrives on courage. Emotional honesty is an act of courage that says, I value truth more than approval. And in doing so, it creates space for relationships that are resilient, meaningful, and deeply human. We don't connect through perfection. We connect through honesty, and that is where real belonging begins. Suppressed emotions always find a voice. We often believe that ignoring our emotions will make them disappear. We tell ourselves to stay strong, move on, or not make a big deal out of things. But emotions don't vanish when we suppress them, they simply change shape. What we refuse to feel doesn't go away, it finds another way to speak. Unexpressed emotions often surface as irritability, chronic stress, resentment, anxiety, or emotional numbness. They show up in our bodies as exhaustion, tension, or illness. They leak into our relationships as defensiveness, withdrawal, or sudden outbursts that seem out of proportion. This is not because we are broken, it's because emotions demand acknowledgement. Suppression is often learned early. Many of us were taught that certain emotions were unacceptable. Anger was labeled disrespectful. Sadness was called weakness. Fear was seen as a lack of faith or confidence. So we adapted. We buried feelings in productivity, people pleasing, humor, or silence. These coping strategies may have helped us survive, but they don't help us live fully. Emotional honesty interrupts this cycle. When we name what we feel, we regain agency. Saying, I'm overwhelmed, or I feel hurt, gives shape to the experience instead of letting it control us from the shadows. Awareness creates choice. Once an emotion is acknowledged, we can respond intentionally instead of reacting unconsciously. Suppressing emotions also distances us from ourselves. Over time, we lose the ability to recognize what we feel at all. We become disconnected, unsure of our needs, and uncertain of our boundaries. Emotional honesty restores that inner clarity. It helps us understand what matters, what hurts, and what needs attention. There is courage in allowing emotions to surface without judgment. Feelings are not instructions, they are information. They tell us when something is misaligned, when a boundary has been crossed, or when a need has gone unmet. Ignoring that information doesn't make us stronger, it makes us less aware. When leaders, parents, partners, or individuals practice emotional honesty, they model emotional literacy. They show that emotions can be felt without being feared and expressed without being destructive. This creates healthier relationships and more resilient environments. Emotions don't disappear when ignored, they wait. And when we finally listen, we don't become weaker, we become wiser. Vulnerability is the gateway to emotional truth. Emotional honesty cannot exist without vulnerability. Vulnerability is the courage to be seen before we are certain of the outcome. It is the willingness to say what is true inside us without knowing how it will be received. And that uncertainty is exactly why vulnerability feels so risky. Many of us confuse vulnerability with weakness. We believe that showing emotion means losing control or authority. But vulnerability is not about emotional chaos, it's about emotional clarity. It's about naming what's real instead of hiding behind silence or strength. Vulnerability asks us to remove the armor we use to protect ourselves from discomfort. That armor may look like sarcasm, perfectionism, emotional distance, or pretending we don't care. While armor can protect us from short-term pain, it also blocks connection, empathy, and growth. Emotional honesty requires vulnerability because truth carries risk. Saying, I'm afraid, I'm disappointed, or I don't feel okay, opens the door to misunderstanding or rejection. But it also opens the door to healing and connection. Without vulnerability, honesty becomes impossible. Vulnerability does not mean oversharing. It means sharing with intention and discernment. It's choosing honesty that aligns with your values, not emotional exposure without boundaries. True vulnerability is grounded, not impulsive. When we practice vulnerability, we teach ourselves that we can survive discomfort. Each honest moment builds trust, not just with others, but with ourselves. We learn that telling the truth does not destroy us. In fact, it strengthens our sense of integrity and self-respect. Vulnerability also deepens emotional intelligence. When we slow down enough to feel and name emotions, we gain insight into our patterns, triggers, and needs. This awareness allows us to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting defensively. The paradox of vulnerability is this: the very thing we fear will make us unsafe is often the thing that creates safety. When one person chooses honesty, it often invites honesty in return. Walls come down. Conversations deepen. Relationships become more real. Vulnerability is not the end of strength. It is the doorway to emotional truth and the beginning of real connection. Emotional honesty strengthens boundaries. Many people believe that emotional honesty means saying yes more often, explaining yourself endlessly, or sharing everything you feel. In reality, emotional honesty is one of the strongest tools for building healthy boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are clarity. When we are emotionally honest with ourselves, we recognize what feels right and what doesn't. We notice discomfort before it turns into resentment. We understand our limits instead of discovering them through burnout. Emotional honesty allows us to say, this doesn't work for me, without guilt or aggression. Without emotional honesty, boundaries become inconsistent or invisible. We say yes when we mean no. We tolerate behavior that hurts us. Over time, frustration builds, and boundaries come out sideways through anger, withdrawal, or shutdown. Emotional honesty prevents this by addressing issues early and clearly. Strong boundaries require emotional awareness. You can't protect what you don't acknowledge. When you know how something makes you feel, you can communicate it directly. This clarity reduces conflict and builds mutual respect. Emotionally honest boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about honoring yourself. They are expressed calmly, firmly, and respectfully. They don't require long justifications. They sound like truth, not defense. In leadership and relationships, emotional honesty prevents over-functioning and people-pleasing. It creates sustainable dynamics where responsibility is shared and expectations are clear. People feel safer when boundaries are consistent and communicated with care. Boundaries also protect connection. When resentment builds, connection erodes. Emotional honesty allows relationships to stay intact by addressing tension before it becomes damage. Saying no with honesty is not rejection, it is self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of healthy relationships. Boundaries built on emotional honesty don't push people away. They create space for respect, trust, and genuine connection. Truth-telling breaks the cycle of shame. Shame thrives in secrecy. It tells us that if others knew how we really felt, we would be judged, rejected, or unworthy of belonging. And so we stay silent. We hide our emotions, minimize our pain, and carry the weight alone. Emotional honesty disrupts shame at its core. Shame loses power the moment we name our experience. Saying, this is hard, or I'm struggling, separates who we are from what we feel. Truth-telling reminds us that emotions are experiences, not identities. When we suppress emotions, shame grows louder. It convinces us that our feelings are wrong or excessive. Emotional honesty challenges that narrative by replacing judgment with understanding. Truth-telling does not mean blaming others or exposing every detail. It means acknowledging reality without distortion. It means telling the truth with compassion for yourself first. When we speak honestly, we often discover we are not alone. Others recognize themselves in our stories. Connection replaces isolation. Empathy replaces judgment. Shame cannot survive in environments of honesty and compassion. Emotional honesty also reduces self-shame. When we stop fighting our feelings, we stop turning against ourselves. We become allies to our own healing instead of critics. Breaking the shame cycle requires courage. But each act of honesty weakens shame's grip and strengthens self-trust. Shame says, hide. Honesty says, you are not alone. Living honestly creates emotional resilience. Emotional resilience is not about being unaffected by pain. It is about being able to move through pain without losing yourself. Emotional honesty is what makes that possible. When we allow ourselves to feel fully, we process experiences instead of carrying them unresolved. Emotions that are felt move through us. Emotions that are avoided stay stuck. Emotional honesty keeps us flexible rather than rigid. Resilient people are not those who feel less. They are those who are willing to feel more with awareness and compassion. Emotional honesty teaches us that discomfort is survivable and temporary. When we tell the truth about our emotions, we reduce emotional buildup. Small truths prevent emotional explosions. Regular honesty creates emotional balance. Living honestly also builds self-trust. You learn that you can handle hard feelings without collapsing or numbing. That confidence makes future challenges less overwhelming. Emotionally honest people recover faster. They grieve openly, ask for support, and learn from experience. They don't waste energy pretending they're fine. Resilience grows from integration, not avoidance. Emotional honesty integrates pain into wisdom. Being honest doesn't make life easier, but it makes you stronger. Emotional honesty doesn't eliminate hardship. It gives you the strength to meet it with courage, clarity, and connection. Conclusion: the power of emotional honesty. Emotional honesty is not a trend or a personality trait. It is a practice, and for many of us, a courageous one. It asks us to slow down, tune in, and tell the truth about what we are actually feeling rather than what feels acceptable to show. In a world that rewards emotional control and constant performance, choosing honesty is a quiet rebellion. It is the decision to live from the inside out instead of the outside in, and that decision changes how we relate to ourselves and everyone around us. When we choose emotional honesty, we choose connection over isolation. We stop hiding behind masks and allow relationships to be built on trust instead of assumptions. Emotional honesty creates space for deeper conversations, stronger bonds, and more authentic belonging. It reminds us that we don't have to earn connection by being perfect, we create it by being real. And in that realness, we discover that we are far less alone than we feared. Emotional honesty also transforms our inner world. When we acknowledge our feelings instead of suppressing them, we gain clarity. We understand our needs, our limits, and our values more clearly. This clarity allows us to set healthier boundaries, make more aligned decisions, and respond to life rather than react to it. Honesty with ourselves becomes the foundation for integrity in how we live and lead. Living honestly does not mean life becomes easier. It means life becomes truer. We will still experience disappointment, grief, fear, and uncertainty. But emotional honesty gives us the resilience to move through those experiences without losing ourselves. It teaches us that emotions are not obstacles to strength. They are pathways to wisdom, healing, and growth. So as you leave here today, remember this: emotional honesty is not about being fearless or exposing everything. It is about having the courage to name what is real, to speak with kindness and clarity, and to stay present with your own humanity. When you choose honesty, you choose connection. When you choose connection, you choose a fuller, braver life. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your willingness to reflect. Thank you for being open to the truth of your inner world. I wish you courage in your honesty, strength in your vulnerability, and connection in your relationships. Goodbye, and may you keep choosing truth one honest moment at a time.